part of my transition out of surgery, that shift of no longer surgeon, took 5 years of grief and loss and
Yeah.
confusion. And I was tied to my title. And it threw me down when I no longer had the title. I wasn't a marathoner. I wasn't all these things. So I think the benefit of really dissecting how integrated are you, how attached are you to the title, is what happens if we lose it. Because medicine, as we talk about often, medicine, dentistry, everything, the whole world is shifting. So whatever we got into medicine or dentistry or whatever people are doing, it may look different. So if we're too attached to the title and not willing to pivot or mold shift, it can really cause what it did to me, a lot of self destruction. So if you are grounded in yourself and the title is just something you do, it, I feel, protects you from that level of crisis mode that you might experience when that identity gets evaporates or changes and shifts. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have back the legendary questers, Dr. Kulkarni and Dr. Yu. We'll be continuing the discussion, which is framed with their book, The Legendary Quest. However, we want to be mindful that if you haven't read the book, please stay tuned, please stay engaged. We'll make sure this conversation is made so that you can also be part of the discussion. And of course, we invite you to read the book, and we will put the link down below. So we started our discussion back in another video with chapter 1, Are You Pursuing Authentic Goals? And for this discussion, we'll be going on to the topic that's discussed in chapter 2, which is called Too Entitled for Your Title. So the legendary questers, why is this an important topic to discuss, and what does it mean, too entitled for your title?
Yeah, I think, we really decided during the book that this topic came up very frequently in our preparation and discussion that, so often, we're all physicians, so we can kind of pick that, too often all of us want to be, or many of us want to be a physician because of how they will feel when they're a physician, because of the prestige or maybe the financial security and a kind of lifestyle, and maybe for the contributions, and maybe because they think they'll be helping others, and so on and so forth, like hundreds of reasons. But is that truly what they want, right? I mean, too often people pursue major goals without really thinking about them, which we talked about in chapter 1. But then, so often people also become somebody or wish to become someone as a particular profession and then get completely attached to it, right? I mean, so many people identify themselves with just their job or what they do for making money.
Mm.
For example, in the medical world, when you go to a conference, I think we say that in the book too, that, you introduce yourself, oh, I'm so and so oral subspecialist, working on, some fancy model and a researcher and this and that, and I work in this center. So we're telling people what we do to make money and support our lifestyle rather than who we are, right? And we're not saying that's right or wrong, but we're saying that that's more commonly the identity people acquire than a human being and than a complete balanced human being as a whole. So, we really wanted to get into the depth of this and explore why that happens. How come we end up becoming like that? What are the predictors of that? What are the influencers of that? And really understand what the data suggests, what the information suggests as to why that's not correct, and how that leads often to dissatisfaction and disengagement and burnout and lots of long-term problems. And I think, stitch in time saves nine, right? The classic proverb. So we really need to recognize that early during our careers, during our training, so that we don't fall in that trap. We are more authentic to ourselves, and we pursue major or minor or whatever goals they are, because it's part of our whole. And it makes a lot of sense to us, rather than because my friend drives a Porsche, so I need one, instead of saying, okay, well, I really care for that kind of thing. What do you think, Francis, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think we are in I don't know if it's an era, but at least among us and people who may be watching, we're not in the same era as, let's say, the previous generations or long time ago generations, where it was probably more, I won't say reasonable, but it made more sense to be uh, identified with your role, let's say, uh, in a little tribe or in a very craftsman, apprentice role in society, uh, sort of society. But we have so many options, right? You can be anything, which, well, that's arguable, but we at least us and people watching, I think we had a lot of options in terms of what sort of role to pursue. But part of all that education never involved uh, what does it really mean individually to be that thing.
Mhm.
I mean, I feel like most doctors don't even know what specialties exists until, I mean, you're on
Yeah,
rotation. I didn't really
true.
know things like that. It's just, oh, doctor. And when and other people say, oh, you're a doctor, they, no, I'm a blah 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 specialist, which is true. It's just that it's it was an idea. I want to be like this, and maybe in a way the reality of becoming it and being it and having a part of our role being that thing uh, never really matches up with how we're actually living. I know that's me. Maybe add on to that to clarify, meaning like we were just saying, we're so focused on the title and the role that something gets lost. And what that something is same for everyone, but different for everyone. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to maybe discuss that a bit more, I think the key point is that when we say, you want to become a doctor or you want to become a pilot or you want to become whatever professional role you decide to become, you're really after a certain set of feelings. You're going to feel proud of yourself or happy or satisfied or feel very successful. It's all those feelings that we are after, and oftentimes we see a huge disparity, right? I mean, people start with that utopian idea that they are going to become XYZ so that they feel ABC, and that doesn't match up. So often we find that there's a huge mismatch in that, and what ends up happening that people get attached to being that X, Y, and Z, and we forget about the feelings, and they're often lost in translation, and there's a huge mismatch in how people may be successful but don't feel or actually experience that kind of success. And we get a lot into that in the next parts of the book, which we are going to discuss. But uh, the data today suggests that so many people are dissatisfied with their jobs, and half of our medical fraternity is burnt out, and our nursing colleagues are so much burnt out, and we are seeing such a big exodus of people from medical profession. And I know the same is true of lawyers and accountants and all very, very qualified people. So something must not be matching up, right? I mean, it was so obvious to us that people are just attached to their role, but they don't really like it or enjoy it. And the theme was so common that we felt it was very crucial to discuss how we perceive our titles and roles as maybe more important than they are. We less often we say, oh, well, I'm a homemaker, or I'm a dad, or I'm a cook, or I'm a gardener. We kind of get attached to what we do to make money, and we get almost entitled to the title.
Well, personally for me though, I've shared this. Maybe it's in the book. I don't remember, but I have shared that that sort of thinking was more, I call it inherited, more from my parents per se. I wasn't, I didn't fit into that demographic exactly where I want to be this and do this so I can have those things. It was more others around me felt that way.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know if impose is the right word, but I just didn't really, I don't know if the word is gave in. I was like, okay, I'll do that because honestly, I didn't have something else
Any tools, yeah.
that, oh, I want to do this thing instead, or maybe I did, and maybe I'm just thinking that I didn't. But I'm just sharing that
Yeah.
there's a different people may have different uh,
Mhm.
paths, but if you're watching this, then we're still in the same space of considering why, not why, but that this has happened, and whether how exactly how that happened may be different, but the commonality is that it is this um, a lot of role title ness, and there's something that was missing. And again,
Yeah.
people come to the same place from different come to the same place from different places. So what was missing, or not missing, what was not attended to healthfully, maybe that differs because the stories are different but similar, same but different. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a huge point there, right? Um, I mean, you alluded to the fact that there's so many determinants of this, and we get into that quite a bit, right? I mean, there's the peer pressure, there's the parental pressure, there's the culture, there's the geography, and then the political scenario and what your friends are doing, and now internet and social media. There's so many of these determinants that obscure your inner core that's kind of trying to shine through, right? It's almost like silencing the child's voice. So I think that's a huge part of this, right? I mean, a lot of people do end up thinking, for whatever reason it may be, like you mentioned, that okay, the right thing to do is the pilot, and that's what's going to make me feel successful and look great and this and that. So I think that's where this whole attachment uh, comes. And maybe it's all historic, maybe it's acquired over generations, maybe it's the security of finances, or security associated with certain positions, or just the way people perceive certain lifestyles and possessions
Mhm.
is why this has happened. But I think it's so key to our existence because, like you said, I think we started there, that virtually there's no limitations, or realistically there's no limitations today. You could become, if you really put in the effort, whoever you chose to be.
Yeah, and I want to highlight. So I started in dentistry, and over the past few years, when I had a lot of things that happened while I was in dental school and then in oral surgery that imprinted some trauma. So I associate a lot of things with
Yeah.
I don't want to be called a dentist. I had like even a virgin, and there's nothing wrong with being a dentist at all.
Hmm.
It just is
Hmm.
like my ex-boyfriend died, and things happen that then associated with dentistry. People don't like the dentist. When I
Yeah.
was in undergrad, and like everyone was so stoked, "Oh, yeah, you can be a dentist. It's such a great thing." I was under the impression that that was going to bring me value, just much like what's discussed when it comes to medicine. And I love medicine. So whatever the interactions were that I had at the time that were positive when I said I was going to become a dentist, that motivated me, and I put blinders on. I recall I put blinders on. I ignored
Hmm.
certain red flags. I liked psychology. And I think I was motivated to do dentistry because there was a fast track in my
Hmm.
undergrad. So you could do 3 years of undergrad, and then your fourth year was actually your first year of dental school.
Wow.
And when I
Yeah.
hit dental school, things that like wasn't sure that was the right fit for me, and you're just like, well, is it your self confidence? What is it? You can't pinpoint it. And just like
Yeah.
we're talking about today, like the titles, if I go and I want to become a doctor, that could be very intrinsically motivated. That could be authentic to your goals.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So, what would you recommend? How can people dive inward in order to really explore where is this coming from? Is it really what I want? And how would you recommend doing their research and making sure they're on a path that is true to them?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to highlight another point. I think, we are in no way saying that all those jobs, roles, and professions are not important, and, they're less important. I think certainly they're crucial to our modern 21st century world, that, you need everybody from cybersecurity expert to corporate lawyer, but it's about gaining the right perspective of, what the value of that particular role, professional role is in your overall life. And, how do we embark on this journey of self growth and actually career longevity and career satisfaction, rather than being just attached to a role that, often leads to the counterproductive thing.
Yes.
So I think to answer, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, you said just not attach that role. So when you're thinking about titles, like I think we just don't want to hold the title on a pedestal and
Yeah.
forfeit our true identity. Like the title, it's not to say don't chase, I mean, the thing that gives you that title. It's to say just make sure you're grounded and that title is just a part of what you do, but just recognize it's not who you are, it's what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, obviously, and I think you asked a huge question, right? I mean, this was part of where the book began. I mean, we are still sort of trying to discuss with our viewers, what the true problems are that lead to lack of fulfillment and lack of authentic success. But I think that's where we go into sort of the inner excellence and outer excellence part of book. How do we start, seeing through this dust and shed some light on our true authentic self? And the book really centers around conscious awareness as a model, and we're going to get into that into future episodes. But I think it's really the gist of it is to really identify who you truly are. And what we try to mean by that in the book is that what's truly near and dear to you, what's important to you, what are those external influences that you acquired along the way, which we will, inadvertently or willingly or unwillingly, and how do we separate those from who we truly are and what we truly want? And we tried to give a clear pathway in the book with backed by theory and published evidence to see how we can do that. I think so that was our effort to get into this. And but the way we thought is that in the first part we really need to highlight what we thought the common problems are. We talked about the limited self model, the lack of ability for so many to pursue authentic goals. And in this part, we are talking about being attached to certain professional titles. And then, in the next summary, we also talk about how people get lost into so many other rabbit holes, and then, we have to sort of undo all of that influence to understand our authentic self is sort of the short and long answer, I guess. Francis, your thoughts?
I think in a way, all the things we just said are specific examples of struggles people may have,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately, like we were just saying, is then how do you actually what do you do about it? I guess.
Yes.
And yeah, and in a way, it's that I mean, it's the truism of just do it, right? We're just doing it, being it, I suppose. And I think one of the things that we gain over the years is uh, what the person with that role looks like, or does, or behaves like, or doesn't do, right? Like a doctor doesn't do this, or a doctor doesn't put up a picture of themselves in a swimsuit on social media. I think that was a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
At some point, and but then like so what, right? It's the I think we're kind of saying why is that why are you saying why are you telling me, or why am I telling me that's me, I'm just that's
Yes.
all there is, and that's me. uh yeah. And again, it's again, we all have the same things we've added on because of wounds or pressures or things that happened, but they're all different in that we, kind of the backgrounds, and the flavors may be different, but the ingredients may be very similar. Maybe put it that way. And it's how to digest, assimilate, and then get rid of maybe those ingredients, or keep the nutrients but get rid of the waste products. But I mean, like food, nutrients and waste products, they kind of all come together. It's not like you can there's it's just not as effective if you just put nutrients in your IV, right? And there's something about the food, but that also then involves getting rid of it. Um, and what that actually is probably similar for everyone, but also kind of different depending on what kind of food you were exposed to, I guess. That I don't know.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean that's a huge point, right? I mean, too often everybody likes patterns. Human mind likes patterns, right? We like to make simplistic patterns, and we have concepts of what's the mold for a particular person or group or profession, and the in group and out group, and all of that kind of stuff. So, I mean, this is about recognizing that we don't need to compartmentalize ourselves, right? I mean, you may have your own particular mold, and all of us, knowingly or unknowingly, get stuck into this silo or mold or pattern or whatever. So it's a lot about undoing a lot of that pattern too. And that's why the first third of the book is dedicated to really understanding what patterns may not be serving you well, before we start developing the patterns, the neural circuits, the habits, or the behaviors, or the digging, or whatever that is going to serve you. So I think a lot of us probably never had the chance to explore what habits, patterns, beliefs, never really served you, and or they are what they, as they call, limiting beliefs in the like coaching language, or
Yes.
just neural circuitry that's junk, and you've never had, probably not you, but all of us maybe never had the chance to resolve restrictive thoughts and emotions and so on and so forth. So I think the other way to look at the first third of the book is that we wanted to present that these are the most common problems most people have. And if you have your old software, you got to first look at that and make sure that's gotten rid of before you install the new fancy software to
Yeah,
run faster on your system.
it's dead on. I love, so the structure for the book, again, people that have read it or may recognize the structure, people that haven't. I love what you could just defined and how it's laid out. It's first recognize the problem, then inner excellence, outer excellence, putting it all together. You are the CEO of your life. And so what we're talking about, we're of course not discouraging. This is like kind of what the kidney does. It dumps out all the
Mhm,
waste and then it takes
mhm.
back in what it needs, right? I always have that image from physiology class. So right now we're just a lot of coaching language in order to
Yeah.
deal with the problem. We have to name it. So the first chapter really is identifying what are the core issues here. And then as people join us and they navigate and they define that, of course, we'd love to hear comments below. We'd love to get outreach, to hear people. We want this to be interactive, to really provide meaning in everyone that is part of this YouTube community, that's part of the Legendary Quest community. Here, where are you stuck? Just I think processing out loud. I know it's good for us as we're processing, like, oh, as you talk and I relate to you, or, we have differences in our stories,
Yeah.
it helps me to see more clearly. Where are
Yeah.
people that are viewing it? Where do you see yourself in us, or where don't you? Some people, for me, I have kind of a different side. When I think about Francis's story, it's like mine, it feels like I always thought being a doctor was going to give me that validation in my family, but it turns
Yeah.
out that some family members are in science and some are anti-science. So being in science didn't give me that instant validation. Being a doctor didn't give me the instant validation. And I have to then define myself as what's true to me if I'm being met with something. It's similar in what Francis was saying, is there's conflict, and it's kind of twisted because I'm like, oh no, but that medicine is what I did when I was a child. I always played doctor when I
Mm.
was a kid. I'm like, that was true to me. I thought that was what was going to give me meaning within my family, but it didn't. But then I found through that conflict what is true to myself, which is holding space for people, authentic connections, and
Mhm.
as you're working with cancer patients, it's working with people with challenging diagnosis. So it helps to shape whatever that conflict is, and it helps you to dive inward, which will be part 2 of the book when we dissect it. So just now that we have talked about chapter 2, of course, I invite people, if you have the book, go back to the book, start commenting, engage with us so that we can support you through recognizing where you fit and identifying if you are chasing one from chapter 1, your authentic goals, how pursuit of the title is impacting any blind spots you might have or any sense of conflict within yourself. And we'll put the links for the Legendary Quest, make sure that they can ask you two directly if they have questions. Because not only do you have the book, but can you share other things that you can support people with on their journey?
I mean, and certainly I think you summarized it very beautifully for chapter 2. I mean, this is such an exploration, right? This is an ongoing journey. This is a process. All of us are at different levels of this journey, and that's not competitive in terms of a statement, but it's just that we are all at different levels, right? And this is about developing a community, a tribe, to support each other. So, for listeners, we do have the podcast, which is also called the Legendary Quest podcast. And of course, Francis and I would both love to reach out to you and chat with you and do coaching, if you're interested in that, because I think it helped me a lot. I mean, Francis has some great experience too. And there's some powerful tools, which it's going back to Einstein's relativity theory. You don't necessarily see what the other person sees. It might be way easier for somebody who is objectively trained in coaching to see the blind spots and redirect you much faster. So it's a powerful tool, and we should all collectively leverage on it, right? Because I've seen it make a difference to me and to others. So I think that's definitely part of it too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, sorry, before I lose this thought, Francis, um, I was just thinking, part of my transition out of surgery, that shift of no longer a surgeon took 5 years of grief and loss and
Yeah.
confusion. And I was tied to my title, and it threw me down when I no longer had the title. I wasn't a marathoner, I wasn't all these things. So I think the benefit of really dissecting how integrated are you, how attached are you to the title, is what happens if we lose it. Because medicine, as we talk about often, medicine, dentistry, everything, the whole world is shifting. So whatever we got into medicine or dentistry or whatever people are doing, it may look different. So if we're too attached to the title and not willing to pivot or shift, it can really cause what it did to me, a lot of self-destruction. So if you are grounded in yourself and the title is just something you do, it, I feel, protects you from that level of crisis mode that you might experience when that identity gets evaporates or changes and shifts. So
Sorry, if I may add really one more point to it before we go to Francis. I mean, it's also part of our current global culture that, I mean, we are too often defined by the things we possess rather than who we truly are. And, that kind of has that marketing angle to it, the sales angle to it, and the capitalistic economy angle to it. And we definitely get into that in the book, but that's so important. That could be part of the reason why most people are stuck to their titles, right? I mean, if you're not that, then you can't have XYZ. And maybe we are not enough grounded into who we truly are, and letting other things define us in terms of external pursuit of success. So I think this ties in very beautifully with the part 3 of the book. So we'll park it for that.
Yeah, I think
yeah, for sure.
Yep. So we'll get to that in our next video as well. So Francis, what are your lasting thoughts for chapter 2?
Yeah, in a way, what we're doing in each chapter in a slightly different way and building is we're kind of sharing our experiences, kind of poking at our own experiences too, and experiencing what that means next, but also poking at other people's anthills and their bubbles and their balloons, and just saying, here's some, maybe a catalyst for something.
Yeah.
Whatever that catalyzes for people, and for us is depends on the person, but that's what we want to offer, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Is these are things that catalyze things for us and continue to do that, and kind of also in a way it's also exposing, it's poking and exposing, right? Where we're asking people, are you exposing yourself to yourself, or are we exposed to ourselves? And does the title prevent us from exposing ourselves to ourselves, or being more just who we are? Not for all people, but like we're saying that may be the case, or that we think that is the case based on what we said for those who have professional status. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode discussion of Chapter 2. And as we mentioned, we'd love to make this a community where we can all be on our journeys together. So please comment down below. Make sure you check out the links to the Legendary Quest and smash that subscribe button to be part of the YouTube community. Until next time.